Hello, everyone in the Healing from BPD.org community. I'm Debbie Corso, the writer behind the Healing from BPD blog and social media pages. And I took a poll of sorts on the Healing from BPD Facebook page as to what would be the most helpful thing to address in this month's video. And overwhelmingly, the consensus was regarding relationships. And relationships are an endless well of topics. We can go in so many directions with talking about the the challenges of relationships, not just for people in general. Everybody faces challenges in relationships. But when you're an emotionally sensitive person or you have borderline personality disorder or BPD, of course, for many of us, there are additional challenges that we must get through that impact our ability to be effective in relationships and to keep relationships. And I think what the theme was in terms of what people wanted to most talk about was how to get out of toxic relationships, how to end hopeless relationships essentially, and move on and feel like we can be strong enough to do so and survive the pain and the scariness of the change that can come with leaving a relationship. Because most of us know that even a negative relationship usually gives us some benefit, and that's why we stay. And sometimes that benefit is something as simple but yet so complex as being afraid to be alone, being scared to be on our own, not being able to tolerate loneliness. So it could be a really, really terrible, in a lot of ways, relationship, but somehow we may find ways in our mind to justify staying in that relationship because we're so terrified of the alternative. And at least we know what we're getting out of this current relationship, even if in our heart of hearts we know that it's not a healthy place to be. I have someone in mind right now that I'm thinking of in my life who I love very dearly. And my whole life that I've known her, she has gone from one type of abusive relationship to another. And it's always been very sad for me to witness because I've wanted to see her be happy. And initially, in the great deal of these cases, of these relationships she's been in, of course, they didn't always start out abusive. And that's what got her in love and drawn in and attached and feeling like, oh, but I can change him. Oh, that's not how he really is. Or, oh, he's just under a lot of stress. He really loves me. Because initially it starts out, with the romance and the kindness and the love and the opening of doors and, being attentive and being respectful. And then slowly for her, the partner would start to show different colors and become angry and possessive and physically and verbally abusive. And, with this being a pattern for her repeatedly, it's been really difficult, I'm sure, for her. And I know that recently in a relationship that she's currently in, she had the opportunity to get away from this person. I mean, he was actually put in jail temporarily. A emergency restraining order was issued. All of these things were being set up and put in place for her to, start a new life and be safe. But she ended up going back to him, which disappointed all of us. And a number of us had actually said, before, at the time that he was arrested and she had the opportunity and the restraining order was in place and people were offering for her to stay with them and get away and start a new life, a number of us had said collectively, hey, you know what, we love you so much, and if you go back to him, it's going to be really difficult for us to be in relationship to you. And it's not that we're going to abandon you or, just completely leave your life, but we are going to need some space and distance because we're getting triggered and we're constantly concerned and worried about you. And she still made that choice, and we don't take it personally, of course. And I will talk to you in a moment about how I've been in that person's very similar situation. So I'm able to have that compassion and not judge her because I know it's very complex. But she did make that choice to choose him and that, abusive situation as a priority over her other relationships with people who really love her and care about her, which in essence can create isolation for herself, which the loved ones happen to know that her partner would like to happen. He wants to isolate her. That's part of the abuse. And it's just so complicated and difficult. It really is. And this woman is in her 50s. And like I said, as long as I've known her and as long as people who are older than me have known her, it has been this pattern and this situation. And if we look at it from the dialectical behavior therapy perspective and what Dr. Marsha Linehan might say, we could say that there's definitely cause for everything. Her story, this woman's story, everything that happened to her from birth, her upbringing, different things, which her upbringing was very, very difficult, and a lot of abandonment, and lost her father when she was very young. So there are a lot of reasons why someone would end up, unable, at least for a period of their life or, for a long-term period, to break free easily from toxic and difficult relationships and hopeless relationships due to, all of these variables that led up to that moment in their life. So I have compassion. I don't judge her, and I would never completely abandon her or anything like that because I know how terrifying that would be. I'm not sure that she has BPD, but I have suspected it just as someone who suffered from this disorder for so many years and can pick up on and see a lot of times the traits in others, just as a person who's experienced it. So just to give you a hopeful perspective as well, because I know a lot of you who were messaging on the Facebook page or responding rather with comments and the like button and everything about this topic and saying, yes, I really need this. You may relate to the woman's story that I just told in some way, shape, or form. So this is a person that I love. So I'm going to tell you about another person that I love and also who's going through this, who is able to break free but is still stuck in a lot of ways. Maybe you'll see yourself in her story. And then I'm going to tell you about mine as well. So this other loved one also she's actually the daughter of the person that I was speaking about previously. So she already had a lot of this set up for her in terms of, having seen this and witnessed it and having it modeled for her. And it was also very painful for me because she's closer to my age and, we grew up together for a lot of years, to witness her also going from one abusive relationship to another. And she's just a precious person, very shy. Unless you get her angry, then another side comes out entirely. But very shy, soft-spoken, insecure, beautiful girl. Always had a complex and still does about her weight, being a little overweight and so on, and has allowed that, I think, in a lot of ways to impact how she allows other people to treat her and how she believes she deserves to be treated. And she was in some terrible abusive relationships up until, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And she finally decided, despite the fact that she was terrified of being alone and really afraid, also because she has some serious mental health diagnoses that include paranoia, that impact, how terrified she feels when she's alone. So it's not just a fear of being alone and abandonment that some of us may experience with borderline personality disorder or BPD, but even beyond that, some real paranoia and delusions as a result from a lot of things, but partially PTSD from actually having been traumatized. She still decided, with the help and support of her therapist, that she wanted to go on her own and get her own place and live her life without all that drama, without all that chaos, etc., etc. And it wasn't easy for her. And I noticed, especially initially, she would go in and out of, unhealthy relationships, not quite as toxic as the abusive ones, but, maybe getting involved with someone who was in recovery and then fell off the wagon and was drinking again and trying to save that person and help that person. Or, just really finding herself in relationships, very brief and fleeting, with people who had really serious issues going on in their lives, and maybe her feeling like she was in the helper role is what I ascertained from the conversations that I had with her. And more recently, it's been getting progressively better for her. So you can see this is so complex, and I want you guys to have compassion with yourself, because for most people, it's not an overnight thing. You snap your fingers and you're out of that toxic relationship and you're moving on and you're never heading back to unhealthy relationships. That's not realistic, of course, for so many reasons. And one of them being that you probably have some feelings, emotions, and attachments to the person that you're trying to end the relationship with. You haven't had another model, and so you just know what you know, and you may not know any better at this point. You don't have the skills, support, and all of that yet, which that can all come, and it will. If you seek it, it will come. So as you can see in this example with this person I'm talking about now, she, is progressively getting better. She didn't just wake up overnight and say, hey, I'm done with this crap and now I'm living a healthy life and have like this ideal relationship with the perfect partner and all that. Not going to happen instantly. I think if we go into the choice to change how we're in relationships with a realistic, expectation, it's a lot better, because then we don't feel like a failure, that we did it wrong, or that it's hopeless that we could ever do it. We know there are going to be difficulties, there's going to be temptations. A lot of times when people are in abusive situations, they keep going back to the abuser. I'll be talking about that in my story. And I also want to point out that if you are in a situation where you're being hurt, I want to put this out there right now. You may or may not be ready for it, but I just ask you to consider to please reach out to a local agency when you're ready and get the help you need to get out of that situation. Nowadays, they have what they didn't have when I was a kid, which is like all kinds of support for women and men who are in abusive situations, including safe shelters and, quick restraining orders and counseling and all of that stuff. So as I'm telling this story, and if you're feeling like, oh my God, I need help, please know that it's out there. And there are domestic violence hotlines, there are domestic violence support places. All you have to do is Google it. If you're in an area of the world where you're not sure, post it on the Healing from BPD Facebook page under this video thread and say, hey, Debbie, I heard you talking about this. I'm in, the middle of yeah, wherever you are, and I don't know where to find something. I will try to help you find it. So please reach out if you need to, if you're ready. So anyway, back to this young lady. So now what I've noticed with her is that she continues to live on her own. The types of individuals that she's getting involved with are less and less dysfunctional. And sometimes when she's really lonely, and I know a lot of us can relate to this. I've done it. Have you done it? She contacts people from the past who aren't, quote unquote, so bad, to just have a conversation, to just go for coffee, to just, trying to recreate the positive, happy memories, and unfortunately, in her particular situation, it has always turned out to be, going back to the old and the negative. So I think she's slowly progressing and being able to be on her own, and it's a long journey, especially after seeing her mother, who is still in that pattern and has not yet been able to break it. This girl is very strong for being able to do that. So in my personal story, I got married when I was very young, and I was so, the word's not delusional, but in a way it kind of was. My borderline personality disorder was so bad in terms of I had no idea there was anything wrong with me at that time, and I was completely in the throes and in the thick of severe symptomology with borderline personality disorder. And I thought there was something wrong with everyone else and not with me. I had no insight at that time. I really didn't. And when I look back, I can't even believe I am the same person as who I was when I was around 18, 19 years old, because, you learn something as you go. You begin to have insights, have aha moments. You get the help you need, hopefully, and then you can see things differently. I just can't believe it sometimes, to be honest with you. So I look back and realize that I really pushed and forced a marriage that wasn't meant to be with someone who was not worthy of me, and who was not a good match at all. I I basically saved myself. I was a virgin, which is really unusual for 18-year-olds these days, and even back when I was 18. And I thought because I allowed this person to share this moment with me, I had to marry him and he had to marry me. And that was one of the worst mistakes I ever made in my life, and it lasted for many, many years. And it was a horror story. And my husband was a drug addict, an alcoholic, an abuser. He was very, very frightening, very scary. And at the same time, not to say that I did anything to provoke him or to deserve any of what happened. And at the same time, I know that I contributed a lot to the dysfunction and to the pushing of his buttons and to the chaos and insanity that went on in our lives, because I was so, I lived in such cognitive distortion because of the borderline personality disorder symptoms that, if I had a thought that he cheated on me, or if I had a thought that, he was thinking something insulting about me or whatever, I believed it and I acted on it. And he just thought I was totally crazy. And then that would make me angry because I thought that he was trying to make me think I was crazy and I wasn't crazy. And it was really difficult. But when I look back and I say, wow, I really believed my thoughts back then. And some of the time I was probably right. Some of the time the thoughts that I had were probably based on things that were happening. But a lot of times I didn't have evidence. So I could see why to someone else that would look completely crazy for me to say, oh, you're thinking right now that I put on a lot of weight and how much bigger is she going to get? And he's just sitting there watching TV. And I'm completely convinced that he's thinking that because a sexy, skinny, blonde lady came on TV and he happens to be just looking, watching a show, and she came on. He did nothing wrong. But that's how dysfunctional I was back then, and insecure, and, had the distorted thoughts that I was having, which made being in a healthy relationship difficult, let alone a very unhealthy relationship. And it took me years to get out of it. I left and went back, left and went back. I did go to, battered women's shelters. I went to all kinds of things. But it wasn't until I was finally done and ready, which took about 6, 7 years to leave and not turn back, and to file my divorce papers and never contact him again, that happened. And it was not easy. But it happened eventually, and I haven't turned back. And so I just want you guys to have hope and to know that it can take time. There are reasons why it takes time. There are reasons why we stay in these unhealthy and toxic relationships much longer than others around us would understand why we do. And I think it's time for us to remember how it does impact others around us, and to just consider for a moment their experience so that we understand why they're so upset, why it's so difficult for them, having heard these stories that I've shared today, right? And also to have that compassion for yourself. So this is a huge, deep topic conversation. So without even having time to get into this time, well, what do I start to do beyond, getting the help that you need to get out, or just considering some of these concepts, considering what you relate to, considering what parts of the stories you identify to, and having your own aha moments. I think this is going to be more of a series. The skills that help and have helped me with being able to start working on issues around relationships, whether they be healthy relationships or getting out of toxic negative ones, are a set of skills in dialectical behavior therapy called interpersonal effectiveness. And there's a wealth of information online about that. And if you go to healingfrombpd.org and type in interpersonal effectiveness, tons of posts will come up. If you're wanting to look specifically at some skill sets, you can also look at dbtselfhelp.com for some ideas. And also rowanprogram.com has some great blog posts on the subject as well to start reading. And let's keep this dialogue going. Let's keep this conversation going. Let's see where the next time we address this topic, where we should go with the direction. What do you want to learn? What would be helpful to you? How do you relate to the story? Share, and let's go ahead and keep going with this. I'm so glad you guys reached out and picked this topic. It's a really important one. And I totally get it, and I understand the complexity of it all. It's not just us as humans dealing with relationship issues. It's us as humans with borderline personality disorder or BPD traits, and some of us also with PTSD or complex PTSD, trying to navigate this with all of those additional challenges. We can do it. It just takes more effort, and we can put that forward. It takes time. It takes compassion. Thank you for being with me today. I really hope you'll like this video. Click that like button, comment below. Let me know what you think and any questions that you have that we can maybe address in the future videos. Thank you so much, you guys. This is Debbie Corso signing off for now. Visit me at healingfrombpd.org and the Healing from BPD Facebook page. Talk to you later. Bye for now.